With us. I'd like to welcome you back at any time. Before we start this morning, Brother Allen is going to lead us in a word of prayer.
Let's pray together. Almighty God, our holy and righteous Father in heaven, we gather here this morning so well aware of the mercy and the grace and the blessings that you've given us. We thank you for the opportunity and the health that we have to be here this morning to study another portion of thy word. It is our prayer, Father, that all the teachers who are here this morning, who have prepared lessons for the various groups, will be blessed in a special way. We ask you to be with us as we study this morning. Open our hearts, open our minds. Give us the strength and the courage to do thy will. Father, we are mindful of those who will not be with us here this morning because of illness. We ask that your comforting hand be upon them. Father, to you be the power, the glory, and the honor forever. Amen.
On Wednesday, we talked about the birth of Christ, and we're going to kind of backtrack a little bit. We're kind of going to be going over that again, but we're going to look at some things in more detail this time around. So if you'd like, go ahead and turn to Matthew chapter 2. Maybe this will catch up in just a minute. Oh, sorry about that. I'll close that back out in a minute, open it up if it doesn't work. Matthew chapter 2, verses 1 through 12. This is the visit of the wise men. And after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, in the days of Herod the king, behold, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem, saying, Where is he who has been born King of the Jews? We have seen his star in the east and have come to worship him. When Herod the king heard this, he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. And when he had gathered all the chief priests and scribes of the people together, he inquired of them where the Christ was to be born. So they said to him, In Bethlehem of Judea, for thus it is written by the prophet, But you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are not the least among the rulers of Judah. For out of you shall come a ruler who will shepherd my people Israel. Then Herod, when he had secretly called the wise men, determined from them what time the star appeared. And he sent them to Bethlehem and said, Go and search carefully for the young child, and when you have found him, bring back word to me, that I may come and worship him also. When they heard the king, they departed. And behold, the star which they had seen in the east went before them, till it came and stood over where the young child was. When they saw the star, they rejoiced with exceedingly great joy. And when they had come into the house, they saw the young child with Mary his mother, and fell down and worshipped him. And when they had opened their treasures, they presented gifts to him, gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Then, being divinely warned in a dream that they should not return to Herod, they departed for their own country another way. Bear with me 1 second. It's froze up on me. And we'll get to this later too, but if you don't know the whole story, you're thinking, oh, Herod, he could be kind of maybe sincere, couldn't he? But what was his plan? Did he really want to see Jesus and worship him?
Yep. We'll see what his real intent is later on.
Yep.
When he has all the children of
And they know exactly why they're coming. It's not that they're just wandering through and they happen to see something interesting in the sky. They know that this child is there. They have been told.
Yep. And they were told to go too. Go and you will see.
The other day, this is a lesson, actually David Deason had a lesson on this the other day. And he said something I've never even thought of. These wise men coming from the east were Gentiles. More than likely.
And we'll get into that in a few minutes too, of the possibility of where we don't know for sure, of course, but even where some of their gifts came from at that time too. So who were these wise men? One commentator. The word rendered wise men is more correctly magi, a term which designates an order of priests and philosophers which belong originally to Persia and Media, and who were extensively distributed over the region of the Euphrates. Those described in the book of Daniel as wise men, astrologers, magicians belong to this order. We can only speculate where these wise men came from, but the probability is that they journeyed from the valley of the Euphrates. It's like you said, yeah, they would have been potentially Gentiles. And in verse 2 again, where is he who is born King of the Jews? For we have seen his star in the east, like Brother Jolly had mentioned, and have come to worship him. In Brother Waldron's material, this star experienced a radical change in its location in the sky to lead them on their journey. They saw the star in the east, which means it was to the west of them. And this wasn't just another normal star in the sky. It would have had to have been different so they could stay focused on that star. Marcus?
Stars don't rise from the west, they
Yep.
rise from the east.
Mm-hmm.
And so this would have been an especially strange event to anybody that stood looking at the sky for any amount of time.
And too, if you go outside on a starry night, a real starry night, pick out a star, close your eyes, spin around a circle, try to find that exact same star. And it's going to be kind of difficult. And there's so many of the same size and everything. They came to Jerusalem, where they talked with Herod. Then the same star went before them again until it stood over the place where Jesus was. From Jerusalem, the star would have to be due south to lead them to Bethlehem. No known phenomenon of nature follows such pattern, as Marcus was saying. Therefore, the only logical explanation is that this star was a miraculous sign in the sky, and that God communicated with these men to let them know it would lead them to the newborn King of the Jews. And of course, I 100% agree with that. God was behind this star the whole time, and God was in control of that star and leading them to their destination. And of course, as we just read, that star led them to Bethlehem, and it's almost due south of Jerusalem there. And when you go on Google Maps now, it shows the distance a little over 5 miles. So not too long of a walk, but I don't know what the terrain is like. I'm sure it could be hilly. And now it says it takes almost 2 hours to walk that distance now. And then we hadn't talked much about Bethlehem, the history of it, or what it means. It literally means the house of bread. It's now a town in Palestine, in which Jacob buried Rachel, then known as, get my pronunciation right, Ephrath. And then when you add it's also called Bethlehem Ephrathah in Micah 5 verse 2. Bethlehem in Judea, Bethlehem of Judea, in the city of David, in Luke chapter 2 and verse 4, and John 7:42. The city overlooks the main highway to Hebron in Egypt, and Ibzan of Bethlehem judged Israel after Jephthah. Elimelech, the husband of Naomi and father-in-law of Ruth, was a Bethlehemite, as was Boaz. David was born in Bethlehem, and here he was anointed as future king by Samuel. As we mentioned, Bethlehem is about due south, well, about 5 miles due south of Jerusalem, and elevated 2,460 feet above sea level. Comments?
I'm wondering if the star was only seen by these magi. If everybody could see it, it seems like Herod would have been able to see it, and he was alerted that something was going on. Do you have any thoughts about that?
I've never really even thought about it until you just mentioned it,
I hadn't even thought about it until I was sitting right here, and so I thought I would ask you.
which makes you wonder if it was this miraculous sign, this spectacular thing, would more people have been wanting to? I mean, we don't know, but go ahead.
It certainly was miraculous. We don't know the nature of exactly, what it looked like, how it was operating, all those sorts of things. But, mentioned on one of the slides up there that you had, these were magi. They had a lot of connections and studying the stars and, formations of, all of the astronomical things and so forth. So they would, no doubt, no matter how that star was operating, they've studied the stars, they know how the stars are supposed to work, and this ain't it, right? They know something's different. So that at least plays into it, I think. Again, we don't know exactly how.
And too, they were also told about it. Would anybody else have been looking for that at that time too? Mm-mm.
Yeah, we don't know.
Yeah.
If anybody else knew what they knew.
Yeah. Here and then here.
In this, you see the providence of God, that everybody's not coming. There's a purpose in this, and that these men are, and he should be honored, to some degree, and he will be honored to a certain degree, if you will. And so you see the purpose and the plan of God, how it just, the simplicity and yet the beauty of it, it's just, it's as big as it needs to be.
Yep. Marcus.
And also you see the plan of God, the way it is, everything is not ready yet. As we studied last time, John the Baptist is meant to go forth and prepare the way of the Lord. And so, really, as we know, the historians and the scribes and everyone said, around this time they knew it was about time for the Messiah to come. This was an era, they call it an anticipation, because they knew. And so God does a few small things with a few small people to let some know that the Messiah has been born, but they're not ready for him as king yet, because they assume that it's an earthly king. And so for them to find him as an infant, try to make him, try to make that connection, then would be the wrong time. And so it has to wait until everything is ready, until John has prepared the way.
Yep.
But it's still, in order to build that anticipation, in order to build that preparation, he wants it to be known that the Savior is born.
And what we do know is God is in control of this entire situation.
And also, looking forward just a second, the fact they're gonna have to go to Egypt, and they're poor. Think about the gifts that the Magi brought. That would have financed their trip and possibly their stay in Egypt. And so that was, God using the Magi to help them on their way as well, was the process.
Anything else? Matthew 2, picking up in verse 11. We're going back to verse 11. And going into the house, they saw the child with Mary, his mother, and they fell down and worshipped. Then, opening their treasures, they offered him gifts, gold, frankincense, and myrrh. As we just mentioned, these would have been considered nice or valuable physical gifts. Gold, of course, is still valuable. It stood the test of time. On Friday, I looked it up, and gold was $2,060 an ounce. So it just seems like it steadily just keeps on increasing. Sometimes it drops, sometimes it goes up. Kind of like silver, but silver is way less valuable than gold per ounce. And we don't know the exact amount that was given to them, but regardless, that would have helped out tremendously. Frankincense, a resin that forms from the milky sap of the boswellia tree, if I pronounce that right. Once harvested, is then used in a number of perfumes and aromatherapy treatments. And that tree usually grows anywhere from 6 feet to 26 feet tall, with one or more trunks. As you see there, there's several potentially sprouting up out of it. And the bark has a texture kind of like paper, so it can easily be removed. When you look it up now, it says that it's native to Oman, Yemen, and also Somalia and the Horn of Africa. And most of the quality frankincense is collected today comes from Oman, Yemen, and northern Somalia. Back in biblical times, frankincense was often used in religious rites, perfumes, and for medicine. And also the gift of myrrh, a reddish-brown resinous material that the dried sap of a number of trees, but primarily from the Commiphora myrrha, native to Yemen, Somalia, the eastern parts of Ethiopia, and Jordan. And it was used for embalming at the time, and it was very valuable, especially in the time of the Roman Empire. And supposedly Nero burned year's supply worth of myrrh at the funeral of his wife, Poppaea Sabina, in the year 65. So that would have been the value of it. That would have been an expensive ritual or funeral there. Any comments on those gifts? The flight to Egypt. Matthew 2:13 through 15. Now when they had departed, behold, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream and said, Rise, take the child and his mother, and flee to Egypt, and remain there until I tell you, for Herod is about to search for the child to destroy him. And he rose and took the child and his mother by night and departed to Egypt, and remained there until the death of Herod. This was to fulfill what the Lord had spoken by the prophet, Out of Egypt I called my son. And as we mentioned, we know Herod's plans, but did Herod throw God a curveball here with anything? No, he didn't. We just read, of course, there is referencing Hosea 11:1. This was prophesied hundreds of years before this event even took place. God is in control, and he's always been in control of his plans. And now we'll get into what Herod's plans were. You will turn to Matthew chapter 2, we'll read 16 through 18. Matthew chapter 2, verses 16 through 18. Then Herod, when he saw that he was deceived by the wise men, was exceedingly angry, and he sent forth and put to death all the male children who were in Bethlehem and in all its districts from 2 years old and under, according to the time which he had determined from the wise men. Then was fulfilled that was spoken by Jeremiah the prophet, saying, A voice was heard in Ramah, lamentation, weeping, and great mourning, Rachel weeping for her children, refusing to be comforted, because they are no more. You know, we previously mentioned how wicked that Herod was. You know, why was he so angry? What was this to him?
This was just a rival for him. He was the king, he was in power. That's his thing. And throughout history, even today, you see what some people will do, what lengths they will go to hold on to their power. Hold on to their ability to say, I'm
And Wes mentioned it more in detail too. Herod was a puppet of the Roman Empire. So when he heard King of the Jews, not only a threat to him, but he had to do something to keep his power too, so nobody else could potentially rise up, what he thought, and take him off of his.
Herod was an old man by now. He was, as Brother Walter pointed out, he was growing increasingly paranoid. He's old, grown, he should have been a wise man by this time, but his mind was disappearing. As I said, he was becoming paranoid, so it's not surprising what he did, based on the reasons that, others have pointed out here this morning. People who get into positions of power like that, no matter how old they get, they can't stand to give it up.
Yep.
It just continues to eat at them. Nothing is never enough. So he set out to kill Jesus, and if he had to, he'd kill every child in Bethlehem that age. And it's not like, this is probably the most famous thing he's known for things that he did. And there were other things. So he rebuilt the temple in Jerusalem. But this one is by far the thing that we know him most for, and yet it's not recorded in secular history. So what happened here was not like a situation where you have stormtroopers entering the city of Bethlehem and just massive killing overnight. This was done stealthily.
I was gonna say that this is gonna sound very strange, but in one sense, he's not wrong. Find out later on. The Jews, they've always been a fiercely independent people at heart, and made in the belief that they would rise up against the Romans if they had a king, to put forward, and that would cause, either they would overthrow the Roman Empire, or the Roman Empire would send people, and that would cost Herod his position and his sons that position one way or the other. But we see later on in the story, in the New Testament story, that the Jews do revolt against the Romans eventually.
Yep.
So you're pushed enough. So in order to keep them under hand, he definitely cannot have anybody inspiring and calling themselves king.
Yep.
Herod was born, a king of the Jews had been born. The actions that he took to, kill every child under 2 years old, kind of puts me in the mind of another king back a lot earlier, Saul, when he was told that the kingdom would be taken from him and given to David. His heart was hardened, and he tried everything in his power to get. So you look back at that king, they just do not want to relinquish the power. He was told by a prophet that the kingdom wouldn't be his anymore, and he still did everything he could to try to kill David. It's just hard for a king to be up so high, and when they tell him that it's not going to be, they think that they have a route coming in for them to accept it.
It's like Brother Allen mentioned too. Like he said, once people get in that position of power, if their heart's not right, guess what? They're going to want to keep it at all cost. And we talk about Herod a lot. Think about the ones that executed this order. Now, who could do that? Who could go up and kill a child? So the hearts of these men that were up under him were just as wicked as he was. Marcus.
I was going to say that it comes down to it, Roman soldiers, it was death for them to disobey orders. When it came down to it, it was them or the children they were not going to disobey.
Yep. Anything else?
Just say that God's plan is still moving forward. It's not caught off guard. His son has come. He's been glorified, been given gifts, been pronounced.
got his time to be sacrificed, yet we see him grow up, go through that story, but God's plan is still working.
Yep. Anything else? Picking up at 19 through 22. But when Herod died, behold, an angel of the Lord appeared in a dream to Joseph in Egypt, saying, Rise, take the child and his mother, and go to the land of Israel, for those who sought the child's life are dead. And he rose and took the child and his mother, and went to the land of Israel. But when he heard that Archelaus was reigning over Judah in place of his father Herod, he was afraid to go there, and being warned in a dream, he withdrew to the district of Galilee. And we see that Herod died. This is according to Josephus. Died in most dramatic fashion. Stated that a loathsome disease descended upon the ruler as a judgment from God on account of his sins. He describes the horrible details: burning fever, ulcerated entrails, foul discharges, convulsions, stench. That's just, can't even go into detail. That's just horrible, nasty way to die. But also it's one of those things you've seen throughout history. The majority of people would have been sad to see Herod die at this point, especially the Jews. No, he left a legacy no one really would want to follow. He'd be considered, I guess in our time, you'd consider him kind of like Hitler. Not many people would be sad after all the pain and suffering they caused on people. And then another commentator says, the restraint of biblical writers, contrary to urges of human inclination, is one of the subtle but amazing evidences of the Scripture's inspiration. Surely Matthew, left to his own literary devices, would have expanded his account on Herod's death. Obviously, a superior force was at work. And also in history, see that Herod had a son whose name was Antipater. He was of the same cruel disposition as his father. He would doubtless have been every bit as much of a threat to the Lord as his evil father, had he succeeded his wicked father to the throne. In fact, Antipater was a rival to the throne. As Herod's oldest son, he had complained that his father's life was dragging on so long that he would be an old man by the time he became king. Also, according to Josephus, when he mistakenly thought that Herod had died, he evidenced great joy. When word of that rejoicing reached the ailing king, he had his son killed immediately. This was only 5 days before Herod himself had expired. Hence, it could be accurately said that they are dead that sought the young child's life. Again, it's not inspired, but according to Josephus, it's a possibility that could have taken place with his son. Again, how wicked just to have your son just killed at the drop of a hat. Of course, also the son, how wicked was he, hoping his father would die so he could take the throne. So they're like two peas in a pod there. They're exactly the same. Any comments? Verse 23. And he went and lived in a city called Nazareth, that was spoken by the prophets might be fulfilled. He shall be called the Nazarene. Again, prophecy here. Was no coincidence. God had all this planned out since the beginning, and nothing was going to stop or interfere with God's plans. And Matthew 1 is one of the records we have about the genealogy of Jesus. I know there's a lot of names, but we'll take the time to read that, just because some of this will be fresh on our minds from our recent studies in the Old Testament. Turn to Matthew chapter 1. Matthew chapter 1, verses 1 through 17. And I'm sure I won't pronounce all the names correctly, but the book of the genealogy of Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham. Abraham begot Isaac, Isaac begot Jacob, and Jacob begot Judah and his brothers. Judah begot Perez and Zerah by Tamar. Perez begot Hezron, and Hezron begot Ram. Ram begot Amminadab, and Amminadab begot Nahshon, and Nahshon begot Salmon. Salmon begot Boaz and Rahab, Boaz by Rahab. Boaz begot Obed by Ruth. Obed begot Jesse. And Jesse begot David the king. David the king begot Solomon by her who had been the wife of Uriah. Solomon begot Rehoboam. Rehoboam begot Abijah, and Abijah begot Asa. Asa begot Jehoshaphat. Jehoshaphat begot Joram, and Joram begot Uzziah. Uzziah begot Jotham, and Jotham begot Ahaz, and Ahaz begot Hezekiah. Hezekiah begot Manasseh, Manasseh begot Ammon, and Ammon begot Josiah. Josiah begot Jeconiah and his brothers about the time they were carried away to Babylon. And after they were brought to Babylon, Jeconiah begot Shealtiel, and Shealtiel begot Zerubbabel. Zerubbabel begot Abud, and Abud begot Elikim, and Elikim begot Azor. Azor begot Zadok, Zadok begot Achim, and Achim begot Eliud. Eliud begot Eleazar, and Eleazar begot Mathan, and Mathan begot Jacob. And Jacob begot Joseph, the husband of Mary, of whom was born Jesus, who is called Christ. So all the generations from Abraham to David are 14 generations. From David until the captivity in Babylon are 14 generations. And from the captivity in Babylon until the Christ are 14 generations. So who is this Jesus? We see there his genealogy, and we mentioned it multiple times in our recent studies. There was always going to be that righteous remnant that was preserved, and we see some of those there. And not all those in that list were righteous, were they? No. But there was a remnant there that was. And that remnant led us to Christ. So why worship this baby? I want to read a note out of Brother Waldron's material. Angels announced his birth. Shepherds came to see him, and wise men later worshiped him. He looked like an ordinary baby, but of course, he was very different. John describes him this way. Go ahead and turn to John chapter 1. John chapter 1. Beginning in verse 1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things were made through him, and without him nothing was made that was made. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. And the light shines in darkness, and the darkness did not comprehend it. There was a man sent from God whose name was John. The man came for a witness to bear witness of the light, that all through him might believe. He was not that light, but was sent to bear witness of that light. That was the true light, which gives light to every man coming into the world. He was in the world, and the world was made through him, and the world did not know him. He came to his own, and his own did not receive him. But as many as received him, to them he gave the right to become children of God, to those who believe in his name, who were born not of blood, nor of the will of the flesh, nor of the will of man, but of God. And the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, and we beheld his glory, and the glory as of the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth. John bore witness of him and cried out, saying, This was he of whom I said, He who comes before me is prepared before me, for he was before me. And of his fullness we have all received, and grace for grace. For the law was given through Moses, but grace and truth come through Jesus Christ. No one has seen God at any time. The only begotten Son, who is in the bosom of the Father, he has declared him. He was in the beginning, he always was. In eternity, he was. He existed with God, separate in personality, but one in essence and purpose. John 17 and verse 21 says, that they all may be one, as you, Father, are in me, and I in you. He is divine, and through him all things were created. He was the creator of the universe lying in a manger. As the eternal Word, he was the communication of God to man. The Word became flesh and dwelt among men. This is why the baby was worshipped. Any comments on that? Oh, Marcus.
One other interesting thing to note, which doesn't really come into play till much later, but where Luke gives what seems to be the parental lineage of Mary, as far as on the male side, but it seems quite obvious that her mother was a Levite, because she was cousin to Elizabeth, who was of the sons of the daughters of Aaron. She was a direct priestly lineage. There was no way for Mary to be her cousin without having somewhere in immediate parentage there, one of the Levites. And so he also has the blood of priests.
Anything else? So now some time has gone by from our last scripture, roughly around 12 years has gone by now. Jesus in the temple. If you would go ahead and turn there, Luke 2, we're using Luke chapter 2, 41 through 51. Luke 2, 41 through 51. His parents went to Jerusalem every year at the feast of the Passover. When he was 12 years old, they went up to Jerusalem according to the custom of the feast. When they had finished the days, as they returned, the boy Jesus lingered behind in Jerusalem, and Joseph and his mother did not know it. But supposing him to have been in the company, they went a day's journey and sought him among their relatives and acquaintances. So when they did not find him, they returned to Jerusalem seeking him. Now so it was that after 3 days they found him in the temple, sitting in the midst of the teachers, both listening to them and asking them questions. And all who heard him were astonished at his understanding and answers. So when they saw him, they were amazed, and his mother said to him, "Son, why have you done this to us? Look, your father and I have sought you anxiously." And he said to them, "Why did you seek me? Did you not know that I must be about my Father's business?" But they did not understand the statement which he spoke to them. Then he went down with them and came to Nazareth, and he was subject to them. But his mother kept all these things in her heart. I think every parent has had a moment like this, and where are the kids? Even if it's just right around the corner and you're at the store, you turn around, they're not there, panic sets in. And Mary and Joseph were no different. It was a scary situation. But you look at the latter part of verse 48, "Son, why have you done this to us? Look, your father and I have sought you anxiously." What would the response of most children be? I know I would have. I thought I was going to be in trouble. I'm sorry. I won't do it again. Please forgive me. But not Jesus. He had a better response in verse 49 there. "Why did you seek me? Did you not know that I must be about my Father's business?" And of course, Mary and Joseph didn't understand, as it says, that statement that he spoke to them. And we brought it up a couple classes ago. Remember what Gabriel told her. How would she not know what? Why do you think that? Why would she not know what Jesus was talking about. Might have got any ideas to that possibly?
Because as time had passed, she kind of forgot maybe some of the things that had been said to her.
Yeah.
Joseph also knew that this was a special child. Both of them had been told, but as we get into our daily life, things like that, we tend to maybe forget things that would guide us in the right direction. And at the moment when it's said to us, we may not remember that. It may take some time for it to click.
And it could have been, it was a little bit of time that had gone by too. So what if nothing had happened?
You know, about 12 years.
Yeah,
right?
about 12 years.
If you put it in the context, you know, you think 12-year-old, you know, they still look at him as a child. And so, you know, we're the parents, we know better. But the point is, you know, she should have, you know, obviously, you know, she should have had a clue, you know, that this was not a normal child. This wasn't going to be your average child. And so I'm just amazed, you know, the example that he leaves us, that even at an early age, he sought God. I mean, he sought, you know, he's getting into that mindset. And you know, maybe we think that, you know, I'll say people in general think I'll worry about that stuff later. I'm off on this and that. But this is a perfect example for us that this is where our true attention needs to be. Whether we're young, whether we're old, in between, focus on God.
Yeah.
I think it covers a little more slack here because, I mean, they were a day away from Jerusalem and they realized he was gone, and it was 3 days after they got to Jerusalem before they found him. So the kid's been missing for 4 days to this point.
There'd be some panic set in.
If you're that hysterical over the fact that he's been missing, I don't know how clearly you're going to be thinking. But the other thing is, I think, you know, we tend to gloss over about him sitting in the temple in the midst of the doctors, you know, the people. These folks, this would be like somebody going in and sitting down a 12-year-old that, you know, normally they wouldn't really even know much about reading and writing at this point at all. This was not how we, you know, most people, if you weren't going to do something that required you to write, you didn't learn writing. You didn't learn those things. This is why the scribes and the Pharisees and such, and those that worked at the temple were held in such high regard because they had to read, you know, the word to the people. The same with all the people at the synagogues that could read. They would be the only ones that would be able to read the word to them. And so this would be like a 12-year-old today going into a college lectureship and discussing physics with the professors there and then being amazed at his knowledge. It was really so far out there that a kid might have such knowledge and such wise answers about this. But the other thing is, we was at the temple talking to people. Where did he spend the night and who fed him? This is, you know, I can only imagine the interesting conversations that had to have been had when somebody, some priest or scribe or somebody took him home to feed him and talked to him all night. You would think, because this, you know, just looking at this and how amazing it would be.
One more, oh, go ahead.
I think too, Brother Mike, this can show us that even with God's word and the knowledge that we have right now, that the weakness of human beings is that we tend to forget what we read, forget what we should be doing, and we have to remind ourselves every day
Yep.
of that churn to make sure that we're doing, you know, what is necessary, that we don't have moments like this. Now, they're not beguiled because of this. I mean, it's noted. You know, I think it's even worse when he's much older and his brothers and mother and them, you know, are trying to say, hey, if you are indeed who you are, you need to go down to this feast. So it shows us the human weakness that we can have and how we need to work diligently to make sure we don't let moments like this happen.
I think of the story of Martha and Mary. You know, Martha was busy doing things, and Mary was listening to Jesus. Jesus tells Martha, you know, that this is more important. It's sort of a little bit like that. It's, you know, it's more important that I was doing this. The things that are important is what it's trying to draw out in that story, and maybe here too. They need to be about his father's business.
Where's the focus at?
Yeah, where's your focus?
Well, we're out of time. Thank everybody for your comments. We'll probably kind of pick back up there and talk a little bit more about Jesus in the temple on Wednesday.